And I'm happy to kick off the last panel of the day, which you can see is opportunities in ccTLDs, IDNs, and gTLDs. And I want to introduce Mason Cole. Mason Cole will be the moderator for today's session. And without further ado, Mason, have a great panel.
Thank you, Peter. Appreciate it very much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mason Cole with Oversee. Welcome to this panel discussion. We're here to discuss investment opportunities and coming trends in country code TLDs, international domain names, and new gTLDs if they ever, in fact, arrive in the marketplace. So thanks for joining us. I'd like to introduce our panel. So first to my left, Ken Hansen. Ken is Senior Director of Business Development at Neustar. He's had 20 years of internet and telecom sales and marketing and business development experience and has been in the domain name industry full-time now for more than a decade. Ken led the business development efforts that resulted in Neustar's entry into the registry business, the award of the .biz contract by ICANN and the Department of Commerce, selecting Neustar to operate and administer the .us TLD. Before rejoining Neustar in 2009, Ken was a co-founder of a domain name registration, parking, and auction service provider in Beijing. And currently at Neustar, Ken's focused on working with applicants in the new gTLD process and business development activities aimed at growing the company's domain registration business. Please welcome Ken Hansen. Okay, next to Ken is Joerg Schweiger. Joerg is a member of the executive board and is the CTO of DNIC, which is the Central Registry for .de domains. Dr. Schweiger is responsible for all technical matters and for HR for the company. His expertise drives the development of DNIC's technical services and gains him a high international appreciation as chair of the CCNSO Incident Response Working Group within ICANN. After graduating from school, Joerg worked in various management functions, including Siemens and Delta Lloyd, and is business unit manager of IT at HDI, a major German insurance company. Welcome, Joerg. Next to Joerg, Daniel Eisenhut. Daniel is International Business Development Director for Internext. He looks after key international accounts and main business partners and clients, finding customized solutions for registrars and other international B2B partners. He specializes in domain service and domain portfolio maintenance. He's a specialist for ccTLDs and related registration processes due to his previous role in domain support. His earlier qualification as a foreign language correspondent facilitated his function in the Latin American, European, and U.S. markets. He represents Internext at the majority of branch-related events, accumulating and sharing indispensable knowledge of the domain business. Welcome, Daniel. Next to Daniel is Andrew Snow, founder and president of, is it Global? Yep, Global Holdings and Latinos US LLC. He's an attorney with intellectual property and business backgrounds. His company is an IDN development and investment company that holds one of the world's largest premium, generic, and geo IDN portfolios in over 24 languages. Andrew has been involved with IDN issues since the late 1990s, including the writing of IDN-related patents and the development of the first IDN-capable internet browser. Within Latinos.us LLC, he has assembled and developed a unique intellectual property vertical designed to serve the fastest growing market in America, U.S. Latinos. The company operates a 600-site network in 27 consumer channels, built on the top of 600 generic Spanish language domains under the .us ccTLD. Please welcome Andrew Snow. All right, thanks for staying with me. Only two more to go. Adrian Kinderis. Adrian is CEO of OS Registry International. Adrian's a domain name entrepreneur and internet industry thought leader. He's CEO and co-founder of the OS Registry group of companies, including OS Registry Limited and OS Registry International. OS Registry is the registry operator and wholesale domain name provider for the .au country code top-level domain, which is globally recognized as one of the world's most successful country code namespaces. OS Registry International is an internationally focused subsidiary that brings domain name skills, technology, and experience to a global audience. Adrian was elected to the Generic Name Support Organization Council for ICANN on the basis of his deep experience in registrar and registry operator roles. In this capacity, he has contributed to the inception of the new gTLD program. Welcome to the panel, Adrian. And finally, at the far end of our panel, Daniel Dryzek.
Yeah.
Okay. Daniel Dryzek, CEO and founder of ddfund.eu. He is CEO and founder of this company, a domain development fund. He's worked in the domain industry for 10 years. His plan is to build a multi-service ccTLD conglomerate in Europe to include a domain fund, auctions, brokerage, appraisals, a domain marketplace, and a registrar. He's the co-organizer of Meet Domainers, a successful event for domain investors and internet entrepreneurs organized in Poland. Prior to ddfund.eu, Daniel served as a domain registrar and hosting company, which he sold in 2005 to Active24 Group. Please welcome Daniel Dryzek. Yeah, we're done. All right, enjoy. All right, well, gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Let's open up a bit to talk about ccTLDs, because some of us here in the room are investors in ccTLDs. Let's just start with a very basic question. What makes for a successful investment strategy in ccTLDs if you're a domain name investor? Joerg, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think there's a whole bouquet of good reasons why you should invest in country code domain names and why you should do so right now. And I'm pretty sure that my colleagues from the Netherlands, from Austria, from the Isle of Man, and from Poland will disclose each and every one of those at our booth. So just make sure that you're going to pop up there and get to know what you need to know. But let me lure you to showing up with some facts about country code domain names. First of all, are they costly? No, I don't think so. They might even be less than $5 a year. Are they hard to handle, to purchase, to maintain? Once again, I don't think so. Of course, there are lots of intermediaries who are going to offer every service you want to just keep your portfolio healthy. And even if you would decide that you might do want to register directly with one of the registries, you can easily do so. We are offering electronic services for you. For example, we do not even know that there is something like a renewal phase, so that might be very interesting for you to know as well. If we come a little bit closer to the money side, what's in concerning money, well, I think we can show that there has been a substantial growth in the market. So, for example, take selling domains under .de. So the market has risen, yeah. Okay. So the market has risen about more than 500% in 4 years. And I think that's quite substantial. And still, it's a developing market, so try to invest, because if you compare this market I just mentioned to the .com market, you see it's just 5 to 10% of the .com market. So there's something to invest in. And lastly, remember what Eli Goodman said on Tuesday, and he was referring to that the traffic is growing rapidly, and that is outside the US. So you have to think of diverting your investments into something else. And it might be a good strategy to do that with country code domains.
I'm sorry, Adrian, go ahead. Yeah, please.
So I think it's a good point. However, I would say that the risks associated can also be exploited in a positive way. So what I mean is, in country code domains, the policy that's behind those domains, or the regulatory bodies that are behind them, aren't necessarily stable. You have the luxury of ICANN within a GTLD namespace, and I can't believe I'm saying that. But at least you have some strict policies and guidelines behind. In country codes, you don't always get that. In fact, they can drop off the map any given time. I mean, we've only got to take Egypt as a recent example. So that's a risk when investing in ccTLDs. However, there's also the fact that some of that policy is very flimsy. And for those of us that want to take advantage of a weak policy environment with which we want to come in and play, that may be a positive out of that also. So you're not always playing within the same playing field as what we do in ICANN and what we're so used to within a GTLD sphere. So that, you've got to sort of go in with your eyes wide open, I would say.
That's a good point. Let me just piggyback from what Joerg was saying and ask Daniel, when you see traffic growing in Europe and in other markets, what do you see in terms of the difference in usage of ccTLDs, ccTLD domain names, or even .com domain names in Europe as opposed to in the rest of the world?
Can I refer also to what Adrian and Joerg said about domain name ccTLD? So I would definitely agree with you that although I'm a really big fan of ccTLDs and I think it's a great investment, but really be careful when you want to put money in ccTLDs, because it's like a new thing that you usually don't know. And you first need to really learn a lot. Like start with terms and regulation at the registry side, and see if you are if you can register the name. Some of the ccTLDs are not open for the for people from outside the country. Some has some different other limitations. So really be careful. And it's great investment. I invest in ccTLDs for now something like 5 years. And 4 or 5 years, but really put some time, use some time to learn about it, and don't do it very fast. That's so. I would agree that you have to be careful, and what you have to do a really good research. So. There are different countries. I specialize in European market, so I will be talking about more Europe than other parts of the world, because I have more knowledge about this part of the world. So there are different countries, and in some countries, for example, .coms are still very strong, and for example, Spain, the Spanish market has now something like 1.2 million ES domain names, which is ccTLD for Spain. But at the same time, they have over 1 million com names that they use too. So the ccTLD market in Spain is not so strong. I mean, it's balanced with com. So companies use both com. Some companies will use com. Some will use ccTLD, Spanish ccTLD. In Poland, for example, it's the other way around. So in Poland, there are 2 million of PL names, .pl, over 2 million PL names, and there are only 200,000 com names, so only 10% of that. So, and for average Polish guy or girl, the com is, PL is the com, so it's that obvious, like in the US, that com is the domain name. In Poland, PL is the domain name, and people really don't care so much about com names. In Germany, for example, it's like 14 million .de names. Of course, it's the strongest, biggest ccTLD market. And on the other hand, but they also have 4 million com names. So com plays quite a significant role in Germany, but again, it's nothing when you compare it to .de. So, and such differences are everywhere. The same for the UK. UK is the second biggest ccTLD market with 9 million domain names, .co.uk. And they really use .co.uk as their very most important domain name, TLD. And so when you start to invest in different ccTLDs, you have to take a look and see, okay, so what people in that country really use? Do they use com? Do they use ccTLD? Or maybe do they use something else? So yeah, do the research.
Daniel Eisenhut, is that the same sort of advice you find giving your clients?
Basically, I would advise everybody to go out and register ccTLDs now. Don't wait until tomorrow. There are some reasons for that. I think most of you would agree that we are all international companies. We would like to spread out in the world and have clients everywhere. And for me, it's a question of trust. There are a lot of companies who prefer to work, for example, with local partners and not with partners in a foreign country. So it is so easy to register your name, your company name, under other extensions and redirect it to your .com domain, for example, to create more trust into other clients. I mean, if you if what Joerg already mentioned is that the ccTLDs are not very expensive, they are really cheap. So if you register the ccTLD for, I don't know, 10 euros or $10 and redirect it to your com domain, and you have the chance to get 1 or 2 clients because of the reason, well, the domain already paid for itself. And for me, it is also a question of trust. If I want to work with a company, I always check if they have my local country extension, because if a company don't even want to spend the money for my local country code, well, why should I trust them? You know, they are not interested in myself, in my country. So I'm not talking about that you need to translate all your page directly in all other languages, but I think the first step is to register the extension of the countries you work with mostly and redirect it to your com domain. I think this is a good point to start for companies and for investors. I mean, the domain market or the internet market is growing steadily, and you can see it especially now in the European countries, as Daniel already mentioned. They use the internet more and more internet businesses grew up, and you have now the chance to register a lot of free names which were free under .com 4 or 5 years ago, and which have now a really good value. And yeah, take the chance to register those domains now and don't wait until they are gone in 2 or 3 years, because the local markets are also aware of this possibility. And yeah, if you want to be first and if you want to have success, do the research as Daniel mentioned and go out and register domains now.
Joerg?
Yeah, let me settle on what Daniel just said, and I think there's a clear trend to what we would call localization. So companies addressing local communities in their local languages and with local content, and it's quite natural that they do want to register a local domain name. So that's why I would advise everybody in the room, yeah, be smart, outrun them, and do register country code domain names.
Andrew, yes?
Yeah, I just want to add a little caveat perspective. It does depend on the language market that you're looking at. Coming from the IDN side and knowing dealing with the various language markets, for example, where Spain and Spanish is a cross-national market on the internet. Therefore, the tendency would be initially to go more .com as local, because you're trying to appeal to cross borders, cross-country code. So language markets determine a lot. That would be very true in Spanish. It's somewhat true in Portuguese. It's very true in Arabic, et cetera, et cetera. It's also true in Russian, because there's a lot of Russians across borders. That's number one. So you look at what the nature of the language market is. What's the layout, the national layout of the language market, number one. Number two, the ccTLD versus the .com actually has its roots a lot in the regulatory environments of the ccTLDs. And actually, us here in the US know this, because we don't speak .us too much, sorry, Ken, but it's because of the initial regulatory environment that we had here in the US. Otherwise, we'd all be here, domainers, talking .us for the last 10 years. We do talk .us because Ken's here, but the regulatory environment in the US was such that there was adaptability to the .com. And same is true in all countries all over the world. That's why in France, for example, you have a high .com acceptance, because they had high barriers on the regulatory side for initial years. There's been deregulation. Same true in Canada. They had a high acceptance of .com. They deregulated the .ca, and so you're seeing more and more. My hunch is that you're going to see a continuous deregulation, and so a trend towards ccTLDs is going to continue.
Well, okay, let's apply what you just said to IDNs. I mean, how do you apply that knowledge in investing in IDNs as well, as opposed to only ccTLDs?
Well, there's an issue of IDNs, doinvest.com, or GTLDs, or ccTLDs. That is an issue. I would first like to approach the IDN issue as a whole and give my perspective on the IDN, where it's been and where it's going. I've been involved in IDN for about a dozen years, not in any official capacity. I feel my mission here today is to provide my expertise of what has happened in this field and where this is going. Basically, what has happened in IDN is when the DNS was built, way back when, it was only partially complete. It was built appropriately for the purpose for which it thought it was intended. However, it was not designed for the purpose which it ended up being. And that is becoming the World Wide Web, where the internet is everywhere, and we're now seeing a total democratization of the internet. And it's going everywhere in all these societies that cannot very well compete in an ASCII-only environment. That is the basic issue of IDN. So what do we do? So for the last decade, we have been trying to put the second piece of the DNS highway attached to the first piece. And so it'll work smoothly. There won't be any breakage. Nobody will break off. There'll be stability. And that all the populations on the planet will be able, through this process of democratization, which is amazing. We're all seeing what's going on in Egypt this week. We know what's at the root of this. And that is where the DNS is going. All the work basically on IDN, a lot of you domainers have been hearing about this for multiple years, has basically been complete. It is just about ended. The first decade of IDN, I call it the infrastructure decade, we're at the end now. I analogize this to like a tennis game, like a tennis event, where we had first game, which was test beds, which occurred initially by VeriSign, November 2000 and the early part of 2001. Then we had, from game, we went to set, which was the migration of the initial coding, which was test coding, was called race. If you guys remember BQ dash dash, if that means anything to anybody. It was set within the system. It migrated to Punycode, and the international standard was accepted. How are these things going to be in the bowels of the DNS? So we had set was the migration to Punycode and the setting of the standard by which IDN is going to propagate, and domain names across Unicode is going to be available to the total population of the planet. I call tiebreaker, which is browser support, which started appearing in 2005, 2007. The Punycode, by the way, migration, the set occurred in 2004. I see Tina's in the room. I'm sure it was 2004, I believe. And 2005 up to 2007, we started getting browser support. So these are three of the pieces of the puzzle. From IE7 and on in Microsoft, IE7, there has been browser support to IDNs. There was initially Mozilla too, but we'll talk about IE. The last piece of the puzzle of the first decade of infrastructure, which is now coming to a close, is called full internationalization. It's IDN.IDN, where the total domain name is not only to the left of the dot in the various languages, but it's also to the right of the dot. This work is just about complete. It's the aliasing of GTLDs or country code TLDs in IDN in various formats. It's done in Russia, it's complete. In China, it's complete. And this year, it's being complete. And the next year, all over the planet. In Arabic, in Egypt, in Saudi Arabia, and other countries. And also, the GTLDs are going to be migrating also via aliasing mechanisms or others, so that in the end, we're going to see that the playing field for domainers is about to change, guys. We've been playing on half the field, which is the ASCII field, which is a great field. But the field is going to open up to be total Unicode field. This is what we're towards the end of this process. So the first decade, the decade of infrastructure for IDN, took a long time, but was a great job. It was a very hard job to complete. People need to appreciate how difficult it was to adhere to all the technical standards so the net will be stable, and all the nationalistic and linguistic and the idiomic interests of people will all align without creating World War III. It's a great job. It's a high task and was done. The second decade is going to be the decade of propagation, which we're just about entering. And I believe that by the end of this decade, you are going to see in many language markets more URL entries via an IDN URL than ASCII.
Just by a show of hands, how many folks in here are investing in IDNs now? Okay, a few. How about ccTLDs? Okay, a few more. Good. How many are just investing in gTLDs at the moment versus sort of segregating anything else off in your portfolio? Okay, all right. So some in the room are aware of what's happening. Some maybe learning about it for the first time now. What makes a ccTLD at this stage right now a good opportunity? I mean, what are the market forces in place that are driving traffic into ccTLDs? Ken?
Yeah, well, I'll talk a little bit about .us. I mean, in the case of .us, it may be a very different situation in other countries with ccTLDs, but in the US, of course, .com has been dominant. So there are a significant number of very good names still available in .us. Currently, 1.5 million names available, and .us names, and those of you who have .us names with good keywords, have very often experienced very good ranking in the search engines. In fact, one of the things that the algorithm, the Google algorithm, looks at when it receives a query is, where is the user coming from? If the user is coming from the U.S. and the content in a .us name is superior to that in the .com, it actually will rank higher in natural search results and monetizes very well.
Others want to weigh in on that? I mean, when you look at, let's take Europe for example. So when what do you see in terms of internet usage, economic development, anything else at a macro level that might drive traffic into the internet via the ccTLDs? Dana?
Now with the euro, we have a common currency now in Europe with all 27 countries now, and you can see that there are more and more traffic or companies from those new European members, and well, there is a request for domains, for products, for online solutions, and you can see that it's more traffic coming from those new members because they have now access to the internet. The country is developing. There is more economy, and you can see that there is a huge increase. And yeah.
Ken?
I think we tend to answer questions about IDNs or ccTLDs in a very broad way, and a lot of what's being said is generally applicable, but it's so important to look at the individual country. So, for example, in .de names, there's probably, if you have a good keyword name, you're going to get a lot of direct type-in traffic, right? But in .us, you're very unlikely to get type-in traffic. So .us is more about development and search engines and ranking. In Germany, hyphenated names are very popular and yield pretty good valuations in the secondary market. In the U.S., there's very little interest in hyphenated names. So you do, and then you have to look at things like in IDNs. What is the keyboard entry method for the IDN? Is it very difficult to type in the native script, or is it much easier to type in ASCII? What are the steps for input on a mobile phone? In China, you have 600 million people on mobile phones. Most of the internet usage is mobile. So you have to take all of these things into account. In China, for example, let's say you're typing the word "chicher." "Chicher" is the Chinese word for a car. Right? So the way you type Chinese "chicher" in Chinese characters is you type QICHE, and then you get the software gives you a pull-down menu, and you choose the characters that mean car. Right? So it's an extra step actually to input the Chinese characters. So anybody who knows how to type the Chinese characters has to know how to type the ASCII characters to get there. And then you have to look at the maturity of the market. In some markets that are fairly well developed, companies have invested a significant amount of money in branding and marketing their ASCII domain, and they're not going to necessarily change their branding overnight and move to the IDN. It's something that they have a significant investment in. So in those markets, you may not see adoption take place as rapidly as in some less developed markets where people are just starting to come online. As these companies come online, since it's an emerging market, they're naturally going to choose their IDN name and are therefore much likely to adopt the IDN right from the beginning. And there'll be very few ASCII names in those markets.
Andrew?
The most undertold story in domains this year, last year that is, 2010. The biggest event was the launch of the IDN in Russia under the .ru, the equivalent in Cyrillic, which is, it looks like a P and an F to us. It's Russian Federation. There were over 500,000 domains registered in the first week. I think they're up to 750,000 now, I'm not sure. There is and it is a market-by-market basis. That is true. Everything is market-by-market. Language market, and determines the ccTLDs per market and IDN adaptation per market. Everything is market. Everything is local. That is absolutely true. But there are certain societies where, as in Russia, there's an inherent need, because they don't quite do so well with the ASCII, the initial inherent adaptability. And once the product becomes available to them and it's mass available, you're going to be seeing this increased adaptation. China has its particular issues, that is true, and that's why I would say it's a huge market, but it's going to take a little bit longer. But the issue also is vis-a-vis the adaptation of, do you invest in ccTLDs locally or .com? That was your previous question, so I wanted to get back to that. Once again, it depends on the regulatory environment for domain investors. Look at the regulatory environment of the ccTLDs. That should tell you what to do. Of course, you look at costs, et cetera, renewal, but that is the key. Are you going to control this property the way you are used to controlling a .com property and want to have that stability of business or not? Or do you need local presence? Because can laws be changed, et cetera? And that's a major key. As far as the applicability to the local market, you're going to want to market to the local market in the language preference of their choice. It's all about mind share. It's about mind share. Domains are a key, are a vehicle to achieving mind share. It's increasingly going to be so as the competition, as the quantity of domains, as websites become prevalent on the internet, as everything can be reached from everywhere at any time. The only way to get an advantage is to achieve some mind share over others. Domains are a great vehicle because they are natural language is how you achieve mind share. So it is key that that domain that is as conducive to the natural language of the target market that you're after as possible. You have also very significant SEO advantages when you're using the correct, the natural language of the end user. For example, about a year or so ago, we sold gifts.com in Hebrew. Under the condition, we've been doing this for quite a while. We've been selling whatever domains, prime domains, but under the condition that you develop, because we want to help assist the market develop. After 90 days, and Israel is a small market, but it's very e-commerce alert, and very active. After 90 days, the domain was on the first, and they developed it as per the contract to a gift site. After 90 days, the domain was on the front page, and it's #1 in Google.il, which is how Israelis will search for gifts. And they will not search it with ASCII, even though they're pretty good with the English. They will type in the Hebrew word matanot for Hebrew in Google.co.il. That is how the populations all over the planet behave. They go to Google in their country code, google.pl or google.de or google.coil or UK, and they will type in whatever is the natural language that comes to them. So in Israel, they'll type in Hebrew. In Russia, they'll type in Russia. And if you own that keyword, .cc or .com, you're in good shape.
So, yeah, okay, well, I'm going to have to take a cue here for everybody who wants to chime in, because I want to get a question to Adrian because of his involvement in governance, but let's finish that out. So, Ken, and then Daniel.
Yeah, I think, not only do you have to look at the country, you have to look at yourself, right? So you have to say, as a domain investor, what's my skill set? What do I do well? What do I intend to do with this name? So if you're investing in domain names in China, do you know Chinese? Are you able to develop Chinese content? If you're someone who generally buys domains and tries to sell them at auction, is there a liquid market for this name? Where can I sell this Chinese domain name? Can I reach a retail buyer of a domain name in the Chinese market? Right? If you generally monetize your names via PPC, well, how am I going to get the traffic? Is there a significant amount of direct navigation traffic that's going to come to the name in that particular country? Some countries have more of a tendency to direct navigate to names than in others. So you have to look at each country. You have to look at your own skill set and how you generally monetize names and see if there's a good fit.
Daniel?
I just want to do a short comment on how people type in the special characters. There are some countries who have their own keyboard, like Germany, for example, and we have our special characters on our keyboard. So for us, it's really easy to type them in, and it's really fast, so we don't have a problem using our special characters. So you also need to check out if the country you're looking for has his own keyboard with the special characters on it, and it's just easier to use it.
Yeah, good point. Andrew?
I would go further because I studied all these keyboards, and I don't want to bore you with them, but you're absolutely correct. The key is to looking if it's an individual separate Unicode on the keyboard itself, as opposed to an accent, on a high combination accent, a la French, some words, not the hotel.com, but or the loans.com in French. Those, yes, that's a combination keyboard action. Those, be careful. But if it's on the keyboard, if it's a natural language letter that when kids in school write papers in college, they have to, that's what they use, that is what they use, and that has value.
So Adrian, a minute ago, Andrew talked a bit about being careful about the regulatory environment where you're investing. I mean, you're involved in domain governance as a member of the GNSO Council. Are we at risk right now for excessive government involvement in domain name management? And if so, what does that mean for investors?
Tricky question. I think really it depends on each individual regime. If you're talking at an ICANN level and with respect to the government advisory committee, and for example, with new ccTLDs and the input they want to, the impact they want to have with veto powers over every ccTLD, that to me is a little bit heavy-handed.
Well, yeah. I mean, we don't even have to go that far. I mean, as you pointed out earlier, look at what's happening in Egypt.
Yeah.
Right. Or other places. I mean, at different governments worldwide have different criteria for how they want behavior exhibited on the internet. If you're investing in ccTLDs, you're investing in IDNs, how do you go about evaluating that level of risk?
Yeah, I think it's really hard. I was going to say before, and I think Ken said it, you need to study the environment that you're going into. And you need to know it very, very well. And little things like, from being in the UAE for a long time, we also run .ae, so we know a lot of that. And the government made a decree to say that all documents had to be, because English was becoming commonplace. And all legal documents had to be in Arabic first and then translated into English. This was a massive change overnight that they just turned around and made. And so there was this huge, swing to Arabic again within the UAE. And so there's something where a government can, at the drop of a hat, make a change. Now, with respect to their internet, they can pull it anytime they want, and they do. And in the UAE, it's just considered normal that at any given time, the Telecommunications Regulatory Authority can pull a website out of it. So having a deep understanding of political sensitivities, other motivations, governmental motivations, is really key to it. And, within .au, we have an overlord as our regulator who rules with an iron fist and occasionally hits you with it. But if you register a domain name and you muck up the policy, he'll delete it. And that's not refund you, that's delete it. And so we've had monetizers come in and there are rules with which you need to play under, and it's still in .au it's generally accepted to have monetization. But if you infringe trademarks or you do, there's no, your name's gone. And a few guys got their fingers burnt coming into the .au market in that way. So I just think that there's a natural progression of understanding of drilling deep into the different areas you want to go in, and understanding the language and keyboard. This is all great stuff.
Yeah.
But it all builds up to get educated, do your research, and I think the rewards will be there.
Daniel Dryzek, do you find the same situation like that in Europe? Is there intensive government interest in market by market in Europe in ccTLDs or IDNs?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
And I think that governments around the world are trying, now to guess, okay, what's this internet about, and why we don't have control, on it, why we can't control it, and what should we do to start to control it. And there is really a lot of effort from all the countries, all the governments around the world that trying to do something about it, and that's really not good. And that's really real threat for the internet, for the independence of the internet. So it's not only about domain name, right? Because as we see in Egypt, you can just switch off the internet and So it's not about internet. It's about whole environment and whole internet thing, not about only domain name. So yeah, it's really scary when I see in European, well-established countries that governments try to just, censor internet. So that's the same in the US. So that's real threat.
Adrian, and then Daniel. Yeah.
And I think one extra layer of complexity is within governments, there's also a lack of understanding within themselves and a lack of communication. And often you'll see that the body responsible for running the registry or managing the policy for there doesn't communicate with some other department that's been wronged or something, and then you're having to answer to different rules and regulations, and you can take a look at the GAC again, the Government Advisory Committee, and their stance at the moment on veto powers and new GTLDs and also stopping all geographic registrations for GTLDs. Yet they don't do it in their own countries.
Right.
Now I can register, in some countries I can register Australia whatever, right?
Yeah.
For a ccTLD. Yet the Australian government, those countries don't enforce the rules that they're asked. So there's like, all different sorts of disparity and different layers of understanding. So I think that's the danger with respect to governments as well, is that they don't have the depth of knowledge.
Dana?
I just wanted to say that some governments not only try to get a control over the internet, some really did, like .cn. They reached about 15 million .cn domain names. And then the government decided that some names are not really, they shouldn't be there. And they, the registry needed to delete 7 million .cn domain names, and they fall back to 6 million. So I guess there will be more governments in the future who really infringe this and really get rid of some domains they don't like.
Well, before we scare everybody with all the talk of the government taking over the internet, I mean, there are opportunities out there. You just have to do your due diligence about what countries you dive into. Right, Andrew?
I just want to add that this also includes us here in the United States. There were two bills that were attempted to pass last year that did not pass, thank goodness, that would impact domain names.
That is true.
And the ability. And I can advise that these bills are going to come again.
That is true.
They're coming across again. I don't know what will be, but the problem is including right here at home.
Yeah, that is true. Let's turn our attention to the new GTLDs for a moment. And I'll open this up to the entire panel. Why do we need new GTLDs in the first place? There may be differing points of view on whether we do or we don't. And what would their immediate impact on the marketplace be? Anyone want to take a first shot at that? Ken?
So this is a topic that's been debated for years, and there are people on both sides of the argument as to whether new GTLDs are necessary. Will they be helpful? Will they be useful? Will they be harmful? The trademark community has been very vocal about their concerns about new GTLDs and the need for them to protect their trademarks in each of the new GTLDs. On the other hand, in general, in the marketplace, choice is good. Giving registrants the ability to choose a TLD that best fits their business, their brand, their mission makes a lot of sense. And when you look at some specific examples, I think the need becomes apparent. For example, where the benefit, I should say, becomes apparent. For example, if you're a law firm and you could register a long.com name, given the unavailability of short, memorable names in .com, or the premium price you might pay for that, you can register a .law name. If I'm an attorney and I just graduated from law school, I think .law becomes quite compelling. If I'm a law firm, if I'm a firm that serves the legal industry, .law is a very good choice. And so why shouldn't an attorney have the ability to choose a .law as their domain name and brand themselves as .law? And there are many other examples. The other argument for new GTLDs is the pricing of premium names today in the market. Whenever you have a small demand, a small supply, and high demand, you get high prices. And a lot of the people in this room have benefited from that small supply and high demand in the form of high prices for .com names in the secondary market. But that very fact demonstrates the fact that we need more supply and more choices to drive the price down to make good names available to more users. I think that's one of the most compelling arguments for new ggTLDs.
Adrian?
Yeah, Mason, I don't tend to get caught up in Ken's right. He's put out the lay of the land fairly well there, and you can argue either way. Freight train's coming anyways, right? I think there's one underlying factor that you can't go past with respect to the introduction of new ggTLDs. And Andrew talked about it before, and that is with respect to IDNs. There is a complete imbalance in the way that the internet is able to be accessed today. And at the moment, no one in the scripts outside of ASCII can have the same experience, end to end. And that's unacceptable. And it's not until you go into the Middle East and you see a billboard, as I did out in the gallows in Saudi Arabia there, and did my best not to get hung, but a billboard up there, completely in Arabic, and then the URL. We've all seen one. The URL is in ASCII, and I said to the government when I had a meeting with them, I took a photo of it and I showed them this picture, and I said, "This is crazy," and I said, "It's not only that." They said, "Take a look at your keyboard," and all keyboards usually are in capital letters, yet we write URLs in lowercase. So I said, it's not just that, it's the kids that don't understand that a lowercase a, they try and find a lowercase a on a keyboard by looking. You can't. So for me, it all boils down to, at the end of the day, equal access. That's what the internet's about. And until we provide that through IDN ggTLDs, yes, they can have their ccTLDs and there's equal access there, but there is a product called a gTLD. .com is a product. So why can't they have the equivalent in an IDN? That to me is the bottom line, and why they must come out.
Daniel?
You're absolutely right, and they absolutely will have them, and the .coms will be basically alias to various variations in the Arabic and the Thai and the Cyrillic, etc., and that's coming. And if it's not 2011, it's 2012. And all these populations across the globe will continue on one hand, democratization of the internet. On the other hand, the governments are trying to pull back. Oh, wait a minute, what's going on? This thing is getting away a little bit, yes. So we must maintain our diligence so that the internet continues to be democratized properly and for all populations. Yeah.
Daniel?
Just wanted to say regarding the new ggTLDs, I like especially those related to huge cities, like, I don't know, .Berlin or .NYC for New York, or .Seoul, for example, because those cities have millions of inhabitants, millions of people live there, and some of them never even leave their city. They always stay there. So I think there's a huge market for domains like Joey's Pizzas.Berlin, Joey's Pizzas.NYC. I don't know, because there are a lot of small companies, bars, restaurants, which have the same name, but there's a different owner, and there's the same name in all those cities. And I think this is a huge opportunity for everybody to have their own name just for the small place where they live. Like, I don't know, names of bars or restaurants or something like that. So I really like those extensions.
Joerg, in Europe, how are Europeans viewing the creation of new gTLDs, and how does that? Will they change their browsing habits? Will they change their investing habits in European TLDs, or will they just ignore new gTLDs and stay in Europe the way they have to this point?
To be honest, I just do not know.
Yeah.
No idea. And I think more or less the habits are not going to change. So which is the way you usually do address or to visit domain names or domains and sites? You're using search engines, and that is not going to change. No matter whether it's a new gTLD or it's a ccTLD, it just won't change to my point of view.
I think a major factor in user behavior will be, what they see day to day. And one of the reasons that .com is so popular is because users have so many impressions of .com names. The introduction of brand gTLDs, I think over time, not necessarily overnight, is going to have an impact on users, because if major brands adopt their own ggTLD, a brand TLD like a .ibm or others, right? Users will see many impressions and start to pay attention, more attention to what is to the right of the dot, right? At one point in the world, telephone numbers in the U.S., for example, only had to be 7 digits. There were no area codes.
Or
right?
3 digits.
And then there became the need to introduce an area code because you ran out of 7-digit numbers and people needed to tell the difference between, oh, this is a New York person, number that I'm calling and with this number as opposed to another location. So people start to pay attention to that. I think brand TLDs over time will train users to look at what's to the right of the dot. I think that's a key element of how over time the industry will change and user habits will evolve.
Adrian?
Yeah, I think with new ggTLDs, we tend to look at the opportunity in 2 dimensions. And we're looking at domain names. And it astounds me with the audience we have here that we don't see more thought around innovation. I don't believe the success of new ggTLDs will be on the volume of domain names, for example.
It'll be on what?
It'll be on innovation. It'll be on the domain name as utility. What I'm waiting for is the smartest guys in our industry that are all sitting out there that took domain names 20 years ago or 15 years ago or however long it was that they picked up their portfolio and started to monetize that and then played some tricks and became millionaires. To apply that logic to a new namespace, a namespace that I'm not necessarily talking about registering a whole heap of names in a new .web. Bullshit, leave it alone, right? For me, it's about own your own namespace and see what innovation you can put within that. So I'm thinking to the left of the dot. I'm thinking, what can we do to play in content in a namespace that we own that maybe no one registers, and how do we monetize that? And we've had some pretty cool conversations with some entrepreneurs out there that have come to us with some business models that blow my mind and aren't about volume in TLDs. And that's where these guys out here need to be thinking, because that's where the next best idea is coming. And it drives me crazy that we have a half full audience, because and it's only through lack of exposure. I get it; they'll know. And we put some badges out today at lunch. Are you for TLDs and are you against them? And overwhelmingly, no one gave a crap about the badges, right? And I think that it's ambivalence, right? Yeah. People at the moment, the guys are sitting back and, well, maybe I'll look at it, maybe I won't, I'll see what happens. And really, with the way that these guys' brains are geared, it's a real opportunity. And I hope that in these sort of sessions to come at different traffic conferences, that we start to see some of that innovation and entrepreneurialism spirit come through, because that's where the opportunity is.
So I want to give one more comment to Daniel and then to Ken, and then maybe one last question we'll open up to the audience. So Daniel, you had a comment?
Just wanted to comment if the user are going to type in or use the new TLDs. I think it depends on the search engines, because if they rank, for example, pizza.berlin higher than pizzaberlin.com, then people will get used to it and will maybe type in .berlin, for example, rather than .com.
Yeah, Ken, that was what you were saying a moment ago.
Yeah. So, I agree, Adrian. Innovation is very important, and there are a number of different types of innovation. Right? There's application innovation. There's serving a community that currently is underserved or is not served. Right? So, and there's serving the IDN community that's currently underserved. So I agree and encourage any applicant to look at those types of opportunities, and any business opportunity. Obviously, you're looking for an underserved market, an application that may not be out there today that there's a demand for that can serve a particular need in the market.
Andrew?
Well, at one point, in my view, the ultimate of the success of GTLDs, et cetera, depends on, does it benefit the consumer? That's the bottom line. Is there any innovation? Is there any added value that's being created? Because if it's just a matter of adding additional potential combinations, the consumer will not take note. I was involved in the telecom industry, vanity numbers also. I come from the phone side. And there we did have an issue of combinations ended. There were no more combinations for 800. It was a universe of 10 million, it was gone. And then 888, et cetera. So it's very limited, but people did not pay attention, and they're still dialing the 800. Even though it's only 4 extensions, well now it's 5. The 855 opened up recently. But because there was no added additional incremental value afforded to them. So if there's no value to them, they're not paying attention. With your example of the local phones, the value to them is they're paying attention because otherwise they don't reach their mom. If they don't dial the 1 before the area code or add the area code, they're not going to reach you. But in the context of domains, there has to be innovation that offers them some benefit to the consumer, and then they will take note. And I suspect that those guys who will do that, GOT applicants who will achieve that, will bear fruit.
Should this may be a question no one's expecting, but should a domainer or a group of domainers apply for their own TLD? Adrian?
Absolutely.
Why?
Well, quite frankly, we're seeing it, that they are. And that's because maybe they think they're ahead of the curve. And I guess all of this is, speaking to everything that everyone's spoken about, that you've got to do your due diligence and work out what you're doing, but maybe there's a niche that they've picked up on, that they've got an interesting way that they think they're going to be able to bring traffic. They understand traffic, right? A domain inherently. So maybe the TLD that they're going to promote in some way, maybe not even to sell domains, will generate some traffic, and therefore they can monetize that. So I think that, there's a very good opportunity for domainers to look at in ccTLDs. And I think that early on, and still to this day, domainers have been looking at ccTLDs saying, well, I'll wait and see what comes out, and then I'll try to play at the second level. That's what they're used to. And I encourage them to change that thinking and come and play at the top level. And own your own namespace, set your own policy, and play your own game. And that's why there's, I think, an opportunity there.
Yeah, go ahead, Dana.
I've been listening to all because I don't have so much knowledge in new ccTLDs. I mean, I'm like in new ccTLDs, I'm more like a consumer than an expert in this field. So I've been really listening, and what I think is that the most successful new ccTLD that will be a new ccTLD that domainers don't care about, and domainers will not invest in it, and not buy any of those domain names, and they will just leave it to consumers and companies to buy them and to develop them. Because as long as we domainers, of course, we will be the first one to buy all the best names. We will be the first one to buy them, and because we know this business. But it's the successful TLD is not the one that most of the domain names are bought by domainers, most of the domains, right? So most successful TLDs now are ccTLDs that were here for years, and in the beginning, no one cared about them, I mean, from the investment point of view. So I don't think that investing in new ccTLDs, in a way, just buying them and parking is the way to do it. So I think it would be much better if domain investors bought some names, but in the same time develop them. Maybe that's the way, and then they will give some additional value to internet users. Otherwise, after a couple of months, internet users will see only parked page. They won't buy it.
I definitely think that domainers with their expertise in the domain industry should invest in new ccTLDs. And I was here a year ago and said that, and pleasantly surprised that a number of domain investors are, as Adrian says, applying for new ccTLDs. And one of the ways to think about it is a domain name is a building, right? A domain name is a building. Well, a ccTLD is land.
Yeah.
It's the vacant land, and you're essentially buying all the land in an industry, or all the land in a vertical vertical category in a keyword on which buildings are going to be built. And as Adrian said, as the registry, you get to determine within ICANN guidelines what your policy is going to be. You get to decide what names will be reserved, what names will be sold on the secondary market. And you're controlling your own destiny because you get to implement a strategy to promote actual adoption and use of the name by businesses. So for example, in the introduction of second-level.co names, Co-Internet did a very effective job of getting large companies like Overstock to adopt O.co.
Yeah.
GoDaddy with their X.co URL shortener. Twitter with their T.co URL shortener. That is really the key to sustained long-term growth and success of a gTLD. Adoption and use in advertising, particularly by large brands, because other brands see that, it lends credibility to the name, it promotes awareness. It's very, very difficult on your own as a registry to invest the advertising dollars required to create global awareness of a new gTLDs. Well, let the registrants do that for you. Get the names into the hands. But so as the registry, a domain investor controls that, those policies, the approach to the market, the branding of that gTLD, and the market acceptance of the gTLD, as opposed to allowing somebody else to create all of those rules for you.
Okay, we're going to open it up for questions. Before we do, I just want to remind everyone that the party tonight at Sky Bar starts at 8 p.m. The buses will be leaving from this hotel at 7 p.m. So everyone be sure and join us. Everyone here is welcome. So I'd like to open up for questions. Anyone have a question for our panel? Yes, sir.
Hi, this is more of a statement that then anybody who wants to take a whack at it can, but I see the proliferation of new extensions as being good for ICANN, to make money off of it. I see it as good for registrars and registries. I see it good for domain attorneys because it's going to create lots of confusion and more business. And as a trademark owner myself, I think it stinks. It forces trademark owners to defend themselves, to have to buy more domains. I think it's a racket. I know all kinds of lawyers who have law firms, and they've done fine with .com. And they use their name, law.com or whatever, or if they can't get .com, they can get .net. There have been all kinds of new extensions created, .museum, .aero, .travel, .coop, .pro, and they're all jokes. Hardly anybody's using them.
Okay, Adrian, yeah?
Yeah, I wasn't going to respond until that last comment. Just be careful what you define as a joke, right? Because just
I'm sorry, but I do understand using different languages. I think that's a perfect example where it does make sense. But to have a new .web, .New York, .nyc, .sfo, whatever, I think those things are just going to create lots of confusion, and I don't think it benefits the number one party we should be thinking about, which is people looking to find what they want on the internet. But I certainly see where it makes sense where you, in Arabic or Cyrillic or whatever.
Ken, you want?
So no doubt, it isn't nirvana. There isn't all upside and no downside to new gTLDs, and there are concerns, and ICANN, as imperfect as it may be, it has a very difficult job. Has been working for 3 years to address some of those concerns, and do they have the perfect solution to all the concerns that have been raised? No, but I think a lot of progress has been made. If New York City, the city of New York, wants there to be a .nyc, to serve the businesses, the communities, and the citizens of New York, why shouldn't they be able to do that? If an entrepreneur sees an opportunity in a particular vertical space that he believes he can serve within a gTLD, let the free market work. Why shouldn't they be able to do that? Let's do the very best we can to address all the concerns that Howard articulated. Mm-hmm. I think we should. If the solutions can be improved, they should be. Let's learn as we go along and make adjustments where there need to be adjustments. But now I guess for 3 years, 4 years, I'm losing track. There have been groups looking at these kinds of issues, have come up with solutions. A lot of progress has been made. You're never going to make everybody happy, right? Entrepreneurs are stepping up. They're making investments they're willing to make an investment in the gTLDs. Why? They see demand in the marketplace. I know very few applicants who are building their business model on volume of trademark registrations. They're looking to serve a community where they believe there's demand, and if they believe that and they're willing to take the business risk of addressing that need in the marketplace, why shouldn't they be able to do that?
So, okay, I own a trademark, a U.S. registered trademark on O2 Cool, and so I own o2cool.com. So now I'm going to have to go get o2cool.nyc and o2cool. Whatever anybody else wants to come up with, or otherwise I'm going to have the potential of confusion. And somebody else can come and register that name, and then I can file a UDRP or whatever. So either I have to spend my time to keep on top of all the new TLDs coming out, or otherwise there's going to be problems.
Andrew?
I suspect that at the end of the day, my friend, your intellectual property is not going to end up being significantly impaired, if at all. So yes, there's cause for concern. I totally understand that from intellectual property side and trademark, whatever. But I do believe that at the end of the day, and the impairment is going to be minimal.
Adrian?
Yeah, I think you're right to have your concerns. The way I look at it, try and break this down as to how will ICANN define success? How will we all define success? If we're looking back on this in 5 years' time, how will we know it's successful? I think that's really, to pick up on, will we see a proliferation of trademark abuse? And it's really hard to nail that down. And I think that's where ICANN has been sort of the rag doll that's been pushed and pulled and thrown around. It's trying to grapple with that. So I don't think there's any clear answers. I think for sure there are risks involved in this whole venture. There are stability of the internet issues and the root and yada yada yada. And ICANN has done its best within its infrastructure, within its parameters to deal with those. But I think in trying to look forward 5 years from now, what success looks like. I like to think that's where ICANN's head is at, is to try to then try and get the 90% right and worry about the 10% periphery when we're away.
Yeah. Another question over here.
So I'm a new investor, 18 months in the industry. So my concern is similar to the gentleman's O2 Cool. It's like everybody's moving into my house with just different bedrooms. So I have a question about that, and then how will the search engines address that? How is there equality in the search engines for trying to address that? I mean, I've made for me a huge investment, and so now it's like we're creating new land on the same spot. I mean, we can't do it physically. Why are we doing it virtually?
Yeah, Adrian?
Do it physically if you want to take a look at the Palm in Dubai. And that's the example I use about what this whole thing is. Right. What's Google going to do is a big question. And we get asked that by potential applicants all the time. How are they going to treat these new gTLDs? And I think that at the end of the day, it's going to be how they do it now. Google's in the business of providing quality search results. And I think that the more applicable your website is to the content that's there, and all the rules that feed into the algorithm now will stay the same. So I think you have little to fear if you're able to get all those constructs right. We saw something that gave me a bit of joy about this whole process was when .co launched, Google changed their algorithm to accept .co registrations. He's pretty pumped at the back. He may have an invested interest there. To recognise a .co as a generic term rather than a Colombian term, a .co registration. So that led all of us that are watching this closely say, wow, if they're going to do that, then we assume that when new ggTLDs come along, they'll make the same adjustments. As to how that impacts you, ma'am, therein lies the rub. And I understand your concerns, and they're completely valid. But we're trying to, when I'm on the GNSO Council with ICANN, are trying to restrict the opportunity for harm, but you're never going to take it away.
Yeah, Andrew?
I would like to add that technology advances rapidly, and the ability of the internet and the chip to multiply and to process data is been well documented that it expands exponentially. The human mind does not. Regretfully, we're much more limited. Therefore, no matter what you put into our space, we have confined space. It's about getting into our mind share. The .com is very well, I'm assuming you're talking about .com trademark, is very well established, has a 15-year pre-branded advantage. Us humans don't adapt that fast. We do not progress as fast. So once again, there are other ggTLDs that already exist prior to your investment in the .com, about 18 months. Are they a problem? .info, whatever? Nothing really that new is about to happen. You're going to be competing for mindshare. .com is in a great place to compete for mindshare.
Adrian? Ma'am, do you protect your trademark in Kazakhstan? Do you protect your trademark in Kazakhstan? Have you registered the domain name in Kazakhstan or in Mongolia? So you haven't there because you figured, it's not that important to me and I'm not going to bother. And I think that if we do see a proliferation of ggTLDs, the only response I sort of have back is, well, you'll protect it where you think it's worthwhile. And that will be to your advantage. If there's going to be traffic going, the reason you want to protect it is because someone's typing that in. There's traffic going there. So it's in your interest to want to try to capture that. And maybe do something with it. And in some ways target it. If it's .computer and you want to have, you've got some good, you've got a trademark that's particular about computers, you want to register in that particular TLD. You're not going to go out and register in every single one, only those that are going to impact you. And it's the same as your existence today in ccTLD land.
We had a question here. Yes, sir.
Hey, Mason.
Hey, Tim.
First of all, I want to thank the panel. This is a great informative panel. ccTLDs and IDNs and ggTLDs are something that I think a lot of us who've been in the industry for a while don't know a lot about. So this is, I think, an example of a great panel for these kind of conferences. So there's overseas people here. I found this to be one of the best panels. And I hope this question isn't a dumb question because I don't know much about this. But
it won't be a dumb question. They said that, right?
When one of the other sessions I attended was the Bob Parsons talk, and there was a question at the end of that, and this kind of stuck with me. I actually don't know the answer, but someone asked him what he thought about ggTLDs, and maybe I was in the back of the room. I misread it. He seemed a little bit put off by that question, but I know he didn't answer it. He just absolutely skipped the question, moved on. And I'm curious if anyone has any comment on if that's a correct interpretation of his response, that somehow he's not fully behind it. He doesn't think it's good for GoDaddy. I don't know why else he would refuse to even say anything about it, unless there's some restrictions to that. But is there any reason you think he might be against it, or maybe it's a more general question, is there a downside for some of these larger registrars that like to play across TLDs to have the introduction of the ggTLDs?
Yeah, maybe the last part of your question is better. I'm not sure that we can actually, or anyone can read Bob Parsons' mind, but Adrian, you want to start?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's I saw that happen too. And after he was just talking about risk and how he built it and driving forward, and then when he was asked about ggTLDs and how that could be a big opportunity, clammed up. So as to the speculation as to why he's doing it, cards close to the chest, and if I was a betting man, I'd say that GoDaddy probably will come and play. but I don't know any more than anyone else, and that's just barroom speculation. We're not going to get that answer. I don't think you can beat it out of him, quite frankly, either. I think he'd be pretty good at holding out on you. But I think that you will see larger registrars. They're definitely going to be impacted. GoDaddy has huge market share, and they are watching this very, very closely, as are all the major registrars. As it's either they're looking at what are the next products that are going to be on our shelves, and how we're going to cater to our existing clients, and how do we on-sell that, and that's great for them. They were screaming out for something like .co. Hey, here's another product on what's getting a pretty sterile shelf. So there's that revenue opportunity for them. But of course, and then coming and playing at the top level. And with vertical integration now, and I don't know if you're following this closely, but ICANN came out and said you can be a registrar and a registry in the same TLD. And up until they came out and said that, it's been prohibited. So that gives another dynamic to this now that says, well, if GoDaddy they've got this huge distribution network now. If I'm them, I'm thinking if I own a TLD, boom, it's out there. And I can get there. So that sort of stuff makes, if I'm Bob Parsons, that's what I'm thinking. But I hope that gave some colour. But for sure, I think that their eyes are closely on it for those reasons I've said.
Anyone else? Anyone else want to take a shot at what's in Bob's head?
I have no idea why Bob didn't answer, but I will say there will be opportunities created for registrars. Just in general, registrars who want to apply for TLDs and become integrated registry registrars. There'll be opportunities for registrars who want to focus on specific markets in categories for generic keyword TLDs. There'll be some relatively small niche TLDs that, let's face it, GoDaddy is not going to feature on their homepage and promote actively. It's just not a large enough opportunity for them. They may not even include it in the choices available on their site, but there may be some other registrars who consider a few $1 million in annual revenue to be very significant to their business. Maybe it represents 20-30% growth. So to that registrar, that ccTLD becomes very important. It becomes strategic to them. They promote it. They want to own that market. So there'll be lots of opportunities like that created for registrars. It really creates a more dynamic, competitive market in the registrar marketplace.
Okay, Adrian.
One last thing on that.
Sure.
So did I just jump in ahead of something? No,
go ahead.
One comment on what Ken was saying. I think distribution is going to be key, and I think people underthink distribution when they're thinking of applying for their own TLD. And you want to sort of get a great understanding about how you're going to get your product out there, and that's where obviously registrars play a large part. And you can have the best TLD, going around and think it's spot on, but if you can't sell it to folks, you're going to fall short in your expectations. So the registrar channel is going to be heavily impacted and have a very, very important part to play in the rollout of these new GTLDs.
So next year we're going to see a Super Bowl ad for GoDaddy.
We might. All right. Other questions? Yeah. Oh, we have a line. All right. Yes, sir.
Along the line of innovation, do any of you ever foresee me being able to go register with any registrar, happy.birthday, or wedding.planner, or domainfest.global? Don't restrict me to registering the left side to one of your GTLDs. I don't care about your GTLDs. I want to register happy.birthday. Let me go register it at GoDaddy. You guys are thinking in a box about GTLDs and things like this, but I want to register 2 words, 3 words, whatever, something. My name, Mark.Van Dyke. But you guys, your innovation idea is great, but you all tend to think, is technology there yet? You seem to know the technology. Is it there yet?
You're talking about going into the root. To the right of the dot, you're talking about going to the root of the internet. And so
it's actually called the root.
It's called.
It is the root zone. Yeah.
It is the root. And so that's root canal, and that's you don't undertake root canal. Every customer can go access whatever registrar and conduct root canal. I think we should have the surgeons do that.
Talk to ICANN, get them thinking that way.
Okay. Yes, sir.
It'll take about 30 years.
Right. That's right.
Partial IDN versus full IDN. Will partial IDN exist after full IDN is really out there?
Full IDN exists also. Already.
No, I know.
But
Will partial IDN fade away, or will there be a market for it?
Can you explain that for everybody, Andrew?
Yeah, partial IDNs, because we're doing a two-step, because the DNS was only invented properly for what the internet thought it was, which was an ASCII world, and then the second part had to be done by ICANN over years, and Tina did a great job in moving that along her tenure in ICANN. So it's a two-step, and actually you can see this in a lot of countries. It's kind of fun to watch. What are they doing in Russia? What do they do in China? What do they do? What is the two-step? So like in December, the 26th, there was the launch of Hebrew.coal. So they already know that they want to go full IDN. It's going to be dot something in Hebrew, either Israel or whatever, but they'll decide. But first, they're priming the market by going to the left of the dot, Hebrew.coal. Some markets did the same two-step. China did the same thing when they went Chinese.cn a few years ago. Some countries going straight to the IDN.IDN, do not pass go. That's Russia last October or last fall, which I spoke about before. They did not have a first launch of, to the left of the dot, Cyrillic.ru. And this has many implications for trademark owners and who own the .ru, ASCII .ru domain names, as they're finding out. These countries, what they're doing, the Israelis and the Chinese, what they're doing is sidestepping all the legal issues. It's clever if you can do it done. Because they're going to say, anybody who's left of the dot in Hebrew is going to get to the equivalent full IDN to the right of the dot. They're going to call it aliasing. And there's going to be technology by which it's aliased. China is already doing that. The .cn, if you own a Chinese .cn domain, Chinese character.cn, which was allowable, you could have bought for the last few years. Well, it's hard to buy now. All these regulatory changes is a different issue. That already has been aliased to .china in the Chinese characters. And two Chinese characters, I mean China. So that your domain name actually, we own some .cns, you actually own the rights to 4 domain names. You own the traditional and the simplified Chinese .cn each and .china in Chinese. So it does get complicated. The bottom line is it's all going towards full IDN. And that's going to be the end result. There was this two-step because societies had to transition to, from an ASCII-only world to an IDN-only world for those societies where it's applicable. So this is the process we're in, and in the end, I suspect all the domains that were IDN.ASCII are going to be aliased to some form or transliterated, or rights are going to be awarded automatically, as in China and Israel, to the right of the dot also.
Adrian?
Yeah, and I guess it just highlights the importance of understanding what you're getting into, because every one of those different, for example, talking in IDN ccTLDs, will have a different approach for that. So maybe they'll keep everything resolving, maybe they'll alias them, maybe they'll drop all those other ones out. So you're going to want to get that understanding before you go in there. And if you've already got the IDN.ASCII, to try and find out what rights you have under IDN.IDN when they're going to do that is, probably something you want to get onto.
All right. So, okay.
I have not seen any country code go that route yet. They've all said if we're awarding the IDN to the left of the dot, ultimately we will not deny you rights to the right of the dot. I've not seen that yet. There's no sign of that.
So let's have Rob be our last question, if that's all right.
Sure.
I'm sorry, there's one more. Okay, so last two. If you could be quick, Rob, that'd be great.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Sorry.
I want to comment on registrars' motivations because we talked about the large registrars, and I think there's 2 things we haven't talked about. First is, as a registrar, I know one of our motivations is how do we deal in all these different languages? So if you look at the world's largest registrar groups, they tend to deal in English very well. They don't tend to deal in other languages very well. So I think that's something we're certainly looking at is if there's going to be this influx of new IDN-TLDs, which I certainly expect, I think it's probably a bigger opportunity for small registrars that are local to grow faster potentially than the big ones, and that destabilizes market shares. And I think that's one of the concerns we certainly have.
Is that a concern or an opportunity, Rob?
Well, I think it's both, but if you ask me what I think the large registrars are worried about, we were talking about one in particular earlier, I think that certainly would be a concern for them is, my God, I've got this market dominance, I'm English only, what the hell do I do?
Yeah.
So, and on the other front, I think the other concern is, with this vertical integration Adrian rested on, is what happens if a large registrar or even a non-registrar gets a TLD and refuses to sell it to the big registrars. So I think registrars are thinking, not only will I want to sell the 500, but will I be able to sell the one I really want to? And so that certainly is to the concerns we're talking about. To Mr. Van Dijk's question, is that correct? You can get it. As of this summer, you'll be able to apply for .Van Dijk. It's 185 grand. I don't know if you can apply on GoDaddy's site, but seriously, it's a price point issue now. Now, there are some studies that say we can't have more than 10,000 of these things in the root reliably, and so to answer your question of unlimited, that probably isn't going to happen. But the reality is, if you want your name .Van Dijk, you can get it as of hopefully this summer. And there's a whole conference on this next week, the .NXT conference up in San Francisco.
We don't want to talk about the conference.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
We're on this conference.
My apologies. Sorry. So that's my comment on what I think are affecting registrars, and what we're certainly going through is huge opportunity, huge risk.
All right, thank you, Rob. Yes, sir, last question.
Yeah, I'd just like to ask if registries actually should be doing more to encourage the development of domains, so actually give people the tools to develop the domains, and also monetization option of the domains, because currently it's just the registrars, the parking companies, etc., which are innovating, but the registries themselves don't seem to be doing anything to encourage the actual development of ggTLDs.
Adrian?
It's generally my understanding is that you don't want me in your business. You want me the hell away. That's called leveling the playing field. So when registries start innovating, registrars that are innovators get upset. Domainers and guys that have gone out there and built their own products to put them ahead of the game, they get upset. So it's a very sort of slippery slope to get onto. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, but what I'm actually saying though is if the registry actually provided the registrar with these tools, so essentially everyone would have the same kind of feature set, and they could either use this feature set or not use the feature set, but it would definitely encourage development or monetization options.
Oh yeah, let's go to Dana.
I think it's a very good question, and I think that there is an example already, .tel, yeah? And so you can, .tel gives you opportunity, gives you tools to do that. And I think, .tel maybe is not an example of very successful TLD, but they have really very nice tools. And I use it by myself as well. I have my Dryzek.tel domain name, and I have some basic information, like contact information to me. And it was really simple to do it. It was like a couple of minutes to do it. And I think, and this is innovation, yeah? So of course, others, if they only copy that, they will not be successful. But I would agree that registries has to offer something. It's not like competing with registrars. It's helping registrars to sell the product and helping them, finding customers, and then also helping customers to develop those sites much easier. So they don't need any WordPress or they don't need any other software. It's already in the TLD, and so it's much easier to get into this TLD. And of course, because more and more people without any skills, any IT skills, come into the space, come into the internet, they need such tools. So the simple tools that will help them use the domain name, they can develop, or maybe they can do anything else with it. So maybe domains will be used not for websites, maybe for some kind of communication, whatever. Innovation, yeah, you talked about it. So I think registries, it's absolutely not about competing with registrars. It's just registry helping registrar to get customer, and also helping a customer to use this TLD. So I think that's one of the way of innovation in new ggTLDs.
Okay, just one last quick thing. You actually brushed on the fact of new ggTLDs earlier, Daniel, and it's very much, I completely agree with you that the new ggTLDs, to succeed, they need to offer something different. So how I see a new ggTLD actually becoming popular is to actually enforce the development of the domain. People can only register the domain if they can develop it.
Yeah.
Ken?
Just a quick comment. Sure. I know we're short on time.
Yeah.
I think it's particularly with registry-registrar integration, you're going to see some creative bundling by these combined registry-registrar entities. They can combine, offer value-added services, content, website building, pre-developed websites, put your logo up. You look at .tel, for example. It's a very different type of TLD. It comes with the website, right? Just add your own content, your own contact information, and there's a website there. Those kinds of things I think should be encouraged in many different types of models, and I think we are likely to see those kinds of things come to market with new gTLDs.
I agree. All right, I'm afraid we need to cut it right there. We're right up against time. So